Bam!
You've built a very successful multi-million-dollar agency company, Fanta.com, right? Which started in the basement that you got from basement office you got from a friend when you quit your $45,000 a year job. You were a
Yeah.
guy with a few lights and a camera, shot a video on a tape with a 3-month-old back at home. What were the overriding factors that drove you to make this decision to start doing that?
Start my company.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family that was kind of European in the way that, like, entrepreneur wasn't a word that existed. Even when I started my company in 2006, I wasn't an entrepreneur. I was a business owner. Like that's what we were. We were business owners, and now we're kind of entrepreneurs. But my grandfather immigrated to Canada in 1950. Him and three cousins were bricklayers who were building foundations as bricklayers, as piecework, right, as freelancers in the construction industry. They were working on a home, and someone came up to the homeowner came up to him and said, "I don't think this general contractor knows what they're doing." And my grandfather and his cousin said, "No, he doesn't, but we could build this house for you." And then they never built a house before.
Right.
And they started building homes. And so I grew up in this family of builders. And I know that people kind of look down on developers and construction industries and stuff. That's what I felt. But what I have learned from a construction family is that if you have a challenge, you can figure it out. You can sketch it out. You can pencil it out. You can do it. You can go. You can try. Good years and bad years. And so I grew up in this family. And so I knew that one day I wanted to do my own thing. I didn't know what it was. Like I looked at real estate. I looked at wedding photography and stuff. And I looked at all of these different things. And like most of us, I thought, well, what are my skill sets? I'm going to start a business around my skill sets. And I went to film school, and I was working in an internet marketing franchise in video and communications. And so when it came time for me to start my company, I was 23. I thought I knew what I was doing. I was only making 45 grand a year, but I thought, heck, if I'm not going to do it, I could do exactly what I'm doing for this one company for 10. I could make so much more money. And the first year I made $18,000. Like we were below the poverty line. The government put us on social assistance. It was like the hardest years of my life. But that's ultimately why I started, because I just thought it would be easier than it really was.
How many employees do you have now?
Now, so this is interesting. We've actually gone through a contraction. So a year and 3 months ago, we were at 24. We're now at 6, which is interesting because I started in 2006. I got hammered in 2008 and 9, like decimated. And so from 11, 15, 17, I'm afraid, like, when's this next recession coming? When's this next? And I had never been through a contraction from a business point of view, and I didn't realize how manageable they were. And so they really scared me for a long time, and it actually slowed growth down. I was so worried in 15 and 16 and 17, when's this recession coming? I was not making investments. I was not getting aggressive. I was holding cash on hand. Mm-hmm. And so I did a bunch of stuff that maybe helped us contract, but I didn't see what was going to happen. I didn't forecast that. And so now we're really, really small. We're really, really busy. And now the fun part is we get to regrow, we get to rehire, we get to scale back up again. But the last year has taught me, not only can a business contract, not only is it not something to be afraid or ashamed of, as hard as it is to let people go, as much as protective work that you need to do, and I prefer to be more on offense, I've learned that, these things are going to happen. And when we're in a position to rehire, we can bring good people back. And it's okay. It's not make or break every minute of every day like I thought it was in the past.
Right. No, that's great advice out there for listeners and entrepreneurs out there, business owners that feel that if they contract or shrink and start to downsize, that it's a bad thing, and they're a failure, or it's embarrassing. And it's really not. I mean, in today's time, different opportunities in different companies, sometimes you have to scale to grow. You have to shrink to scale. You have to take 2 steps back to take 4 steps forward. And I totally admire that, because a lot of people they wouldn't do that. They would be too scared of failure, and they would lose everything. Where you kind of pivoted and adjusted and are making the right moves to rebuild and regrow, which I think is very important. I think people don't realize the grind and the hard work it takes to run a company and make those decisions for all included, not just yourself. You know, you got to think of the masses, not just a few people. You got to think of all your employees and what's the best move for everybody. So you got to make those tough decisions that people forget about.
Well, I mean, in the summertime, I mean, we were up against, is this something we want eventually we want to continue doing? You know, when you contract by whatever we have 75% over the course of a year, I mean, not only is that not fun, not only does no one want, like, you know, last summer none of us wanted to go to work. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, when you're building, it's exciting and there's momentum and everything. When you're shrinking, it's not.
Yeah.
But the lesson is, as you mentioned, yeah, the hard decisions rest on your shoulders, and you have to do what's best for the organization. You have to do what's best for the shareholders, whether that's yourself alone or other people. But also, you need to, like, your responsibility as the business owner is to protect those assets, so that way it can be there for the people now and the people in the future. I mean, that's important.
Well, I've got a motto, you know, 3 tips to run a business. The first thing is, people think when they open a business, they're going to be rich. They're going to make all this money. You just talked about how you made 18 grand. You got to pay your people first. Then you pay your vendors and any other kind of thing you got to pay. Then you have to reinvest. And if there's a little bit left, maybe not, then you can do something. And I think a lot of listeners out there need to understand, whether you've got a small business or a big business, you have to reinvest into the company, and you can't bleed it dry. You'll go out of business really quick. And I went almost 2 years without a paycheck opening the solar company. So, you know, a lot of ramen noodles, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. You know, if I wanted dessert, I was taking bread and cinnamon. I mean, you get it.
Yeah, 2009. So my wife, I mean, I started my company in 2006. By 2008, August of 2008, my wife and I negotiated a great low mortgage rate of 5%. We bought our first house. Things were going great. I had 2 kids. And then 6 months later, it's January of 2009, the depth of the recession. I burned through all my cash on hand. I had to let go of all my team. I was sitting alone in an office in February. And I remember calling my mom and saying, I've just spent the last 3 years and I literally have nothing to show for this. I'm further behind because I haven't made any money. I've given 3 years to something and I have nothing to show for it. And she said, well, just give it one last shot. And so I went out and I borrowed 40 grand. I hired a salesperson. He quit 3 weeks later. I went and hired a headhunter and hired another salesperson. And then I didn't pay myself for 6 months as well, right? Like, it was the same thing. I would cut myself the check. So I'd cut myself the paycheck. I'd pay the income tax on it, and I would take the check and I'd put it in my desk drawer. And for 6 months, they just kind of stacked up. And then finally, my wife is like, "Well, when are you going to start paying us?" And I was just like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know when. And finally, after 6 months, I just converted into a shareholder loan and started paying myself. But there was times where, yeah, I mean, for the first 4 years, I was the lowest paid employee in my company. I think it took 5 years before I made more than 45 grand personally, more than the 45 grand I was making back when I was, 22. And the entire time it felt like, when is this going to turn? When is this going to happen? It's years of the same thing. Why did I just waste from 23 to 28 or 29 when all my friends are moving ahead and everyone's getting better? Why did I waste all that time? And then like this, it turned. Like in the matter of just putting a few pieces together, it turned so fast. Within, then we started hiring more people and then we got more clients. And like within a year and a half, it went from me being the lowest paid to me making more money than I'd ever made. And that's happened to me a few times. And what I've realized is when you're in the moment of that grind and the build to figure out what this thing is, it's not wasted years. It's not wasted time, because it will turn very quickly. And when it does, it's going to catch you by surprise. You're going to think that you got lucky. You're going to think that suddenly the market came to you, or like, no. You spent all this time figuring out what's not quite working. You're not giving up when everyone else would give up. And eventually you find the thing that works, and it works. And then there was a time, where suddenly I go, man, if we keep everyone busy, we are making so much money. It's crazy how much money you can make when the system's working. But it's happened to me a few more times where I'm like, this isn't working. Am I smart? And then it just turns like that, and suddenly everything clicks together.
Damn.